Good evening, everyone. We are here to discuss the UPSC Mains 2024 Geography Optional Paper 2, except for the topics related to trade, transport, communication. I'll discuss rest of the topics. Some topics have already been discussed by Vaishali ma'am, that is related to contemporary issues. So rest of the questions I am going to discuss with you. So if we look at the question paper, it was moderate, not very easy, and also not on the tougher side as well. The map entries, on the other hand, were quite difficult, especially some of the entries most of the students would not have been able to mark. If, for example, Loon Karansar, basically, this is a lake in Rajasthan, a saltwater lake is there. So this was an entry on the difficult side. Goa, most of you would have been able to mark Goa. Goa is an important mine in Paschimi Singhbhum. This is an area which has good amount of iron ore reserves. This is an area wherein we have reserves of hematite. Dharwad rocks are also present in this particular area, part of Singhbhum Shield. Okay, so you had enough of matter to write on this. Raidak River, again a tributary of Sankosh River. Sankosh is a tributary of Brahmaputra River. It meets Brahmaputra at Dhubri, which also marks the end of second national waterway. So if you look at Raidak River, it starts from the areas of Bhutan. So it passes through that particular area of Bhutan. So this most of you would have been able to mark, at least the students who were part of our course. These two entries were on the difficult side, Ekta Nagar and Chandanwari. Babina, if you are familiar with the army cantonments, then you would have been able to mark. Otherwise, this was also a bit difficult for people who do not have any kind of army background or who have not lived in the areas of Uttar Pradesh. Babina basically is a cantonment, important cantonment that we have in Jhansi. So this is the part of Bundelkhand region. Okay. Tatipaka, again, entry which most of you would have been able to mark, a refinery that we have in Andhra Pradesh, one of the very few refineries that we have with ONGC. So ONGC has this refinery in the areas of Andhra Pradesh where we have the Krishna Godavari basin. Okay, so not a very large capacity refinery is there, but one of the very few that is owned by ONGC. Anglong Airport, again, most of you would have been able to mark. This was in the current affairs, the airport that we have in Arunachal. Karaikal and Panna, again, the easiest of the entries. Okay, most of you would have been able to mark these. So, now looking at the questions. The question says, discuss the basis of various explanations for the formation of Shivaliks, 10 marks. The question is not about what are different theories related to formation of Shivaliks. Okay. So if you look at the theories, most of the theories, they have the opinion that Shivaliks are basically nothing but the mountains which have been formed by the upliftment of the alluvial fans that have been made by a number of rivers all across the Himalayas. As they entered into the plains from the Himalayas, as they crossed the middle Himalayas, they formed the alluvial fans which the rivers generally form, or the alluvial cones. Eventually these alluvial fans, they grow in size, they become Piedmont Plateau, or they become Piedmont Plain, or also known as compound alluvial fan. And eventually, because the Indian plate was pushing towards the Eurasian plate from the south towards north, as a result of this alluvial fans, they got uplifted and they formed the Shivaliks. Okay. The question is one of the other theories given by Pilgrim, where Pilgrim talks about the Shivalik River. Pasco, he talks about Indo-Brahm River. So basically, these are the different theories that explain Shivaliks. But the question is not about what are the theories, but the question is about what is the basis of various explanations. Various explanations you can explain, okay, that Shivaliks have been explained, that they have been the result of upliftment of the alluvial fans or compound alluvial fans. But what is the basis? Why do we have these theories? The simple reason being that if I look at the Great Himalayas and Middle Himalayas, Great Himalayas, Middle Himalayas, they have a granitic or a gneissic base, which generally will form the central crystalline axis, and over this gneissic or granitic base, they will have a large amount of sediments which are of marine origin. Largely nummulitic limestones are present, or Muri sediments are there. Okay. So sandstones, shales, that is largely Muri sediments, and nummulitic limestones, they are forming the cone over the granitic base. This is the middle and Great Himalayas. But when I look at shivalics, shivalics are very different in origin. The simple reason being that shivalics are made up of sediments which are fluvial in nature. So sandstones are there, but they are not consolidated, semi-consolidated. जैसे Teepam sandstones are there. Okay? So conglomerates are present, or for example, we have the boulders which are present, or for example, sand, silt and clay, and all of these are not very tightly packed. Most of the areas are there where the shivalics will have all of these sediments or all of these fluvial matter which is not very tightly packed, which makes it ideal lithology for gullying purposes. That is why Chos rivers, they have eroded shivalics, and they have eroded the areas of Hoshiarpur or the Punjab plains. So point is, they are fluvial in origin. They are made up of sediments which are very distinct from the sediments which are making up the Great or Middle Himalayas. This is basically the basis of various explanations. Otherwise, there would have been no need to explain why shivalics are formed through a process which is different from the process which is making up the Great or Middle Himalayas. Okay, this is how you're going to attempt the question. You can very briefly explain about in introduction, because it's just a 10-mark question. You can write about what are shivalics. Then in that case, you can talk about what was the age when they were formed. Then you can talk about what are different theories that explain. And then the main part of the answer is what is the basis of various explanations. Why do we have different explanations? Okay. Then towards the conclusion, very briefly in 1 or 2 lines, you can mention about the significance of shivalics. Okay. The next question is again a 10-marker question. Northeastern states of India are geopolitically sensitive and strategically significant. They are geopolitically sensitive and strategically they are significant. Okay. Now, when you look at the northeastern states, now why are they geopolitically sensitive and why are they strategically significant? Now, when you look at the northeastern states, now look at the location of northeastern states. Northeastern states, they share very long borders with Myanmar. They share long borders with the areas of Bangladesh. They share border with China. They share border with Bhutan. So, when you look at the northeastern states of India, they share border with a number of countries. When you look at these, if let's say I look at geopolitically sensitive, why are they sensitive geopolitically? Because these are some of the areas which are not having a good connectivity with the mainland. They are connected to the India through a small Chikasnek or Siliguri corridor. Now, second, when you look at these areas, you will find that these are those areas, especially Arunachal Pradesh, wherein we have China, which is claiming a large part of Arunachal. Especially because China needs legitimacy to prove its claim over the areas of Tibet, because this area, Tawang, has been the birthplace of 6th Dalai Lama and one of the important areas for the Kagyu sect of the Buddhists. So, when you look at geopolitical, they're sensitive because they have a very long border with a number of countries, especially when it comes to China. We have Arunachal, which is a very sensitive region when it comes to overall geopolitics. Second, if I look at Myanmar, what we are going to notice is Myanmar again has a very long border with India through the areas of Arunachal, through areas of Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram. But when you look at Myanmar, this area of Myanmar that borders Arunachal, Nagaland is also the area which is having a number of non-state actors like Kachin rebels are there, the Shan state, Shan rebels are there. So there are a number of rebels that are there present in those areas. Now, what we find is that these are areas which are not under the complete control of the Myanmarese government. Moreover, these are the areas which are important for, or which are very notorious for the drug trade. Okay, so that we know that there was a 16-kilometer buffer zone between India and Myanmar, where there was complete movement of people from India to Myanmar to India in Nagaland. So they are geopolitically very sensitive here. Okay, then when you look at these, they form our boundaries with the ASEAN nations or with Southeast Asia. So if you want ties with Southeast Asia, if you want the economic development of India through the development of Southeast Asia, then in that case, they again are geopolitically very sensitive regions. Okay? Strategically, they are very important. Yes, strategically they are very important, because when you look at these areas, these are the areas wherein we will find that the cultural aspects are a bit different here. And these are the areas wherein we have seen a lot of insurgency in the recent past. Now, most of the insurgent groups, they are in talking terms with the government, but we have seen a lot of insurgency in the past year. This is the area which is very important because they have a good amount of oil and gas. These are the areas which have good amount of coal, and they're very rich in terms of forest resources as well. Then strategically they are significant also because when you look at the areas here in terms of the racial aspect of the people, in terms of, let's say, the language that the people here speak, there is a lot of heterogeneity that is present in this particular area. In terms of race, you can say that largely it is Mongoloid, largely some parts of Nagaland, maybe Negritos as well. But when it comes to language, there are n number of languages here, and there are a lot of conflicts between the different tribal groups as well into this particular area. So strategically, these are significant. Geopolitically, these are very sensitive as well. Okay, so you will start the question by talking about northeastern states and how the northeastern states, they have their location, which is bordering a number of other countries. Then you can talk about why are they geopolitically sensitive and why are they strategically significant. Institutional factors are playing a dominant role in controlling the agriculture prosperity in India, justified with evidences. Dekho. One is institutional factors controlling agriculture prosperity, and then evidences are being demanded here, 20 marks. You must know what is institutional factor. Institutional factor largely would relate it to the system of land tenure. It will depend on the system of land holding and also to some extent land reforms. Okay? So land reforms, land tenure and land holding size will basically decide the institutional factors. Okay? So agriculture development in any area to a very large extent depends on these factors that are known as institutional factors. For example, there have been relationships drawn between the size of the farm holding and agriculture productivity. There have been relationships drawn between the size of the farm holding and the usage of machines, size of the farm holding and the prosperity or the income of the farmers, or tenureship or the ownership and the agriculture productivity. So when you look at the institutional factors, they play a very important role. Now, everybody knows that. Now, it is saying justify with evidence. How are you going to prove it? For example, if I look at the land holding size, if you look at the land holding size, you are going to notice that we have large farm holdings in the areas of Meghalaya. Okay? We have large farm holdings in the areas of Punjab. And we have large farm holdings in the areas of Haryana. These are some of the areas where farm holding size is large. Meghalaya mein, we will have average size of farm holding which is very large, followed by Punjab. Now, if I compare these areas, what I am going to also notice is Meghalaya mein average income of agriculture household is more than 29,000 rupees a month. This is the average income of an agriculture household in Meghalaya. If you look at the average income of household in Punjab, that according to the government report is approximately 24, if I give you the exact figure, that is 26,701 is the exact figure in Punjab. In Haryana, it is approximately 22,000. That means when you look at these areas where the farm size is large, then you have evidence wherein you will find that these are also the areas where the average income of a household, agriculture household, is also on the higher side. Same ways, compare this with Bihar. Bihar mein average size of farm holding is much less, and as a result of which average income is approximately 8,000 rupees per month. Per household. No, 7,542 to be precise. It is 7,542 to be precise is the average income of a household in a month. Now compare these two and you will find the evidences here. Now what can be the reasons? Justify with evidences. One simple reason is when you have large size of farm holding, then in that case you can use machines, you can have a good productivity. Compare this area with particular this area. ठीक है. Second, land tenure. When you look at the land tenure system, you'll notice that all those areas wherein we have had the land leasing rights given to the corporate bodies, all those areas wherein the government permitted the land rights or the tenancy rights to be given to the, or wherein the personal cultivation, plantation agriculture was permitted. So those are the areas where again you are going to find that the average income is on the higher side. Just for example, Meghalaya. Meghalaya mein good part of income is from pineapples, good part of income is from areca cultivation. Similarly, when I look at these areas, these are the areas wherein we have only subsistence agriculture. So the land tenure system is important because if suppose I have an area wherein the land tenure or security of tenureship is not given to the farmers, then in that case, they are less likely to invest back in land. So because the ownership rights are very complex here, recently, there were a number of news related to how the Chief Minister of Bihar says that we need to complete the land survey by this and this date. So यहाँ पर the land reforms have not been very successful, which has been the case at least in these areas. ठीक है? So you are going to present how, first you are going to write how the land tenure plays a role. ठीक है? How security of tenureship is important for increasing the agriculture productivity. ठीक है? How it is important for increasing agriculture productivity. Second, you will write about how large size of farm holdings will enable us to use machines or to use modern systems of agriculture, which can also help in increasing agriculture production. We can get economies of scale. And how the land reforms which have been successful in some areas of the country have been instrumental in increasing income of the most marginal sections of the society. This is wherein land rights were given to the oppressed section of society. They also saw a lot of social and economic upliftment. And then you are going to give these kind of evidences. Okay? If you don't have the exact figures with you, which most of you would not have, then in that case, you can say Meghalaya has high income, Punjab has high income, whereas there is less income in Bihar. That also can be okay if you don't have the correct figures with you. Okay. So this is how you are going to write. And then towards the conclusion, 20 marks ka hai, you are going to draw the maps here, and towards the conclusion, you are going to write how the new phase of land reforms are required, wherein you need corporate leasing, wherein you need changes in the law so that the people, they are able to provide the land to the tenant farmers with an agreement which is registered, so that these people also get the government benefits related to direct benefit transfer. Is tarah you can conclude it. Achha. Discuss the process of formation of conurbations in India and describe their problems. Because see, the question is not about what are the emerging conurbations, what are conurbations. Basically, it talks about discuss the process of formation of conurbations in India. Because see, if you are writing this, you can simply first define what is a conurbation. Okay? Conurbation is a continuous urban agglomeration. Okay? Wherein two or more than two areas are completely connected with one another, and there's no rural area intervening in between the two areas, and they are interlinked with one another in terms of labor, men and material. Okay? So first you can define conurbations. Achha. Not a lengthy definition, just in not more than 2-3 lines or 4 lines. Achha. Then the process of formation of conurbation. So how is a conurbation formed? You can start the question, or you can start writing with the definition of standard, or you can start with the body with standard urban area, a term that was introduced by the census, and this is also basically the term that we use for planning of the metropolitan areas. So standard urban area of a city will not only include all those areas which are urbanized, but that also includes all those areas which are likely to be urbanized in near future. So I have an area, and the city has grown beyond its administrative limits. It has encroached upon the rural areas. Now suppose a highway is planned along this area. So along the highways, we may expect that there will be more of urbanization. So this area will be defined as standard urban area, which includes the present built up area, the area of the area outside the administrative part, which is urbanized, and the area which is likely to be urbanized in near future. So when you look at conurbations, conurbation basically means a continuous urban agglomeration. It is not same as metropolitan area, because metropolitan area mein there is only one nucleus. Yahan par there can be multiple nucleuses. Second, metropolitan area mein there is a rural area. Yahan par there is no scope for rural area. So process will start with the growth of a city. The process will start with growth of two or more than two cities, and eventually what will happen is with the growth of these cities, they join with one another along the lines of major communication. Jaise it may be linked to an airport, it may be linked to a road, it may be linked to railway, or it may be linked to, let's say, a multimodal transport. Just for example, if from Delhi I go to Noida, and from Noida I go to Greater Noida, from Greater Noida I go along the Yamuna Expressway, up till the areas of Agra, a conurbation is likely to develop with the development of Noida Airport. So Yamuna Authority has developed here. Then when you talk about conurbations, what is going to happen in India is eventually with the development of industrial corridors. With the development of industrial corridors, the development of conurbations is likely to take place, because industrial corridor is not just about linking two areas. It is about a uniform corridor wherein you will have industries, you will have residential quarters, you will have multimodal transport, and this will have a complete linkage. So eventually with the industrial corridors development, we will see the development of the conurbations as well. So whatever conurbations have developed in India in the past, most of these conurbations have been developed, or are, we don't have basically a conurbation in India which is to the scale that we can find in, let's say, US or let's say in Japan. But as of now, when you look at conurbations, most of these are likely to develop along the lines of industrial corridors. Second, whatever conurbations or near conurbations are present in the country, they have seen the development because of the growth of major modes of transport and communication. And along with those, we have seen the development of industries which have also attracted a number of people. So, process is this. Describe their problems. What can be the problems of conurbations? One of the problems of conurbation is that we have seen haphazard growth in case of the development of conurbations. Okay? So we don't have a uniform growth here. Second, if a conurbation has to be functional, then in that case, planning is required. Planning ke saath, what we are today finding is that today when conurbation takes place, the growth is unplanned. When the growth is unplanned, then in that case, we will find that it will not assume the character that we want it to assume. So for example, if there is a conurbation, suppose any kind of conurbation has to focus on the transit-oriented development. Okay? That means there will be a transit-oriented development. Then there has to be a limited distance between the residential and the office spaces. That means you need traditional neighborhood design. So if I look at the conurbations which are likely to develop, we have not seen these kind of planned constructions, these kind of planned developments in those areas. Haphazard growth is basically the problem that we may find with the conurbations that are likely to develop in the country. Okay? So, you will first explain what is a conurbation, then you are going to explain the process. Process may you are going to define about how the standard urban area is used for planning, and eventually the growth is planned along industrial corridor, growth may be planned along the major transport communication mechanism or a multimodal transport mechanism, and then eventually you can talk about the cities become interlinked and the urban areas there's a continuous stretch of urban area. Then you can talk about the problems, you can talk about largely haphazard growth, then the planning which is missing, and also the industrial activities which may not be permanent in many areas, or cities have not seen the kind of growth that they should have seen over the past few years with respect to the industries. Acha. Next, India has wide-ranging regional disparities in economic development. Explain the patterns, implications, and challenges. India has wide range of regional disparities in economic development. When you look at disparities, then you will notice that there are a lot of regional disparities in the country. The question, if you have to start, you can talk about how regional disparity is a phenomena in most of the countries of the world. But in certain other areas, especially in the developing countries, this becomes a major problem. Because in the developed countries, what happens is, if there is a disparity, even the areas which are poor, they may be having the basic necessities of life, which may not be the case in developing countries, where in the underdeveloped regions, people struggle for the basic necessities. You can start the question. Then in that case, you can talk about patterns. Now, what is the pattern? If I look at the pattern, can I say one of the regional disparities in economic development can be between rural and urban area? Okay. This is one of the disparities, largely related to the agriculture in one area and the secondary and tertiary sector in the other area. Okay. So one of the pattern that you can see is that we have rural-urban divide. Okay. Then another pattern you can find is north versus south, north-south disparity, where in terms of the industrial developments, in terms of per capita income, southern states are better placed than many of the northern states. They have been able to attract more industries. Then you can compare, let's say, Uttar Pradesh with Tamil Nadu. Then you can compare, or another pattern that we have is the pattern between the east and west. Compare Bihar with Maharashtra, compare Odisha with Gujarat. So again, east-west is also a pattern that is easily visible here. So if I look at the patterns, then in that case, we will find the pattern between the metropolitan areas and small towns, wherein the metropolitan areas have grown at a much faster pace after independence, or they have seen a much better growth compared to the small towns. So these are the different patterns that have been observed. That is, or you can also talk about, let's say, tribal versus non-tribal regions. So you can talk about a tribal region versus non-tribal. So now you can find what are the disparities. So we find these kind of patterns: north, south, east, west, rural, urban, metro, small towns, tribal versus non-tribal. These are the disparities that we find. Then implications and challenges. If I have the implications, and in that case, what can be the implications here? When I implication. See, when I look at the migration that takes place in the country, whatever migration takes place, maximum of the migration is related to the economic reasons. For example, I have the migration from the tribal areas to the non-tribal areas. Tribals will move out to the non-tribal areas, and then they will move out in search of a better life. As a result, what can be the implication? Acculturation, Sanskritization. The tribal culture will not be valued in the urban areas or the areas where they are moving, or the destination regions. If suppose I look at the divide between east and west, then what happens is, when people from east will move towards the areas of west, then what happens? As a result of which, then there are a number of challenges. You can talk about sons of the soil here. You can talk about how the resources, there is a competition for resources in other areas. Then same is the case what we are witnessing between north and south, that for agriculture purposes, for industrial purposes, today most of the western areas or most of the southern areas, they have workers from east or from north. So this will have implications related to migration, and a number of other challenges are also associated with migration. जैसे for example, challenges related to the demographic change, challenges related to the social changes. So all of these are implications. ठीक है, migration and the associated challenges. अच्छा, then when you look at this disparity, economic disparity, can I say economic disparity may also have political ramifications? For example, if I look at the different reasons for left-wing extremism, one of the reasons for left-wing extremism is the perceived sense that they have been exploited for the welfare of some other areas of the country. So it can have political implications as well. Okay? So this you can write in implications. Achha, then suppose you have to write about challenges. What can be the challenges? Now, why do we have this wide-ranging regional disparity? Why are we not able to bridge the gap? What are the challenges here? देखो, सबसे important challenge is that one, the disparity may be because of historical factors. And these historical factors, you cannot do away within a very short period of time. It is going to take a lot of time. Okay? So it is going to take a lot of time before this historical factor can be brought down to zero, or it can be reduced. Okay? So one is historical factors. Just for example, if I look at the divide between East and West, what has happened is after independence, Western states have been able to take up all the licenses that were meant for industries. They grew at the cost of some other areas. Same ways, when I look at the historical reasons, you can talk about Green Revolution related issues, that how the areas of northwestern India were able to take up most of the resources that were meant for the areas of eastern India as well. So historical challenges hai pehla. Second is that when you have a country which has a limited resource, how do you decide what is to be done? For example, the challenge is what to choose between a low-level stagnation and a high-level equilibrium. Whether should I go for distribution of resources equally, or should I go for deliberate imbalance-based approach? So when you go for the limitations, when you go for the deliberate imbalance-based approach, then definitely there will be regional disparity for some point of time. If you go for the equitable or equal distribution of resources, then in that case, there will be low-level stagnation. So this is another of the challenge. And third challenge is, what have been our approaches related to solving the problem of regional disparity? There's the industrial estates program, or the government starting with Bhilai steel plant, or industry as a mechanism to solve the disparity. All of these have not been very successful in the country. So there are regional disparities. You will start about what is a regional disparity, why do we have, and why is it a greater challenge in a developing nation like India. Second, then you can simply write what are the patterns, implications, challenges under 3 subheadings. And then towards the conclusion, what can be the different measures that can be taken up? What is the new postmodern approach to solve the problems of disparities? Okay? So again, a question on the easier side that most of you would have been able to attempt. Discuss the variations in the nature of glaciers in India and the emerging issues due to climate change. The question is nature of glaciers. I'm not asking you as examiner what are the different types of glaciers. Don't tell me that we have mountain glaciers, we have ice sheets, that we have valley glaciers or Piedmont glaciers. No, we are not talking about this. We are talking about discuss the variations in the nature of glaciers. Okay? So if I talk about Himalayan region in India, the glaciers will be present in the Indian Himalayan region and the Trans-Himalayan region. If I look at the nature, you will find that there is a difference between the glaciers that we find in Karakoram and in the Himalayas. And this is largely to do with the structure of these mountains and also the climatic conditions that we have in these mountainous regions. If I look at Karakoram basically translates to black gravel. It is basically a cone of rock and ice largely. Okay? So if I look at the different peaks, so all of these are basically a cone of rock and ice. So when I look at the glaciers of Himalayas with the glaciers of Karakoram, one basic difference what I'm going to find is that agar ek Karakoram ka glacier hai, this is the glacier of Karakoram, because this is an area where rainfall is very less, because this is the area wherein we have a good amount of rocks. So this entire glacier is covered with a layer of rocks and debris. The entire glacier is covered with a layer of rocks and debris. When the entire glacier gets covered with rock and debris, what is going to happen is this is going to act as an insulator. And as it acts as an insulator, the melting of glaciers here is bit slower. We have slow melting of glaciers in this particular area compared to Himalayas, where we have less of dust, where we have less of debris covering the glaciers. So यहाँ पर the melting of glaciers is faster in the Indian Himalayan region compared to the areas of Karakoram. ये basic variation है. Both are mountain glaciers, just that this is a rock glacier. Rock glacier. Rock glacier basically means wherein a glacier is covered with debris and rocks, wherein the rocks are ultimately going to act as the insulator, where direct heat is not able to reach to the glaciers and melting of glaciers is slowed down. Achha. Then emerging issues due to climate change. Now, basically the major part of this answer, the second part has to be on glacial lake outburst flood. Okay? So major part of the answer has to be on the glacial lake outburst flood. Okay? So you can talk about how this is an imminent disaster in areas of Nepal, in the areas of Sikkim, or in many areas of many cities of India are also threatened by. You can give the example of Chorabari Lake that led to Kedarnath disaster. So it is increasing. Most of these glaciers, when they start melting, the water is dammed by a moraine. And eventually, once the melting increases, then what happens is the moraines come under immense pressure. And because of this hydrostatic pressure, if they are broken, then it may lead to glacial lake outburst floods. Okay? So, ek to ye you are talking about. Second, with the melting of glaciers, what is going to happen is the entire biodiversity may also see a change. Change in the animals that occupy these areas, change in the plants that otherwise occupy these areas. So biodiversity loss is also concerned, but major part of the answer will be on glacial lake outburst flood. Again, not a very difficult question. The question is, domestic tourism in India has immense local resource potential. Discuss the reasons and its various dimensions. Again, the question is on the easier side. Immense local resource potential. Okay. So, discuss the reasons and various dimensions. When you look at the reasons, why do we have such a high local resource potential for domestic tourism? One simple reason is the physiography that we have in the country. One is the physiography of the country. That means we are a country where we have some of the tallest mountain systems of the world. Some of the middle Himalayan mountains wherein we have a pleasing climate. Some of the areas wherein we have very wide beaches. Some of the areas where the vast stretches of deserts are there. Okay? Salt marshes which are again attractive. A number of water bodies. So when you look at the physiography of India, what we are going to find is we have a very diverse physiography, and because we have a diverse physiography, it provides a lot of potential. That means a person, let's say, who belongs to the areas of North India might not have seen a sea. So for him, a beach will be a very attractive destination. Same ways for people living in South India, Central India, have not seen snow. Himalayan region would be a very attractive destination. So one is that we have a physiography which is very diverse. And this is one of the biggest potential for the domestic tourism in the country. Achha. Then, when you look at the climate, because of physiography, because of vast stretch of the landmass that is making up India, we have a very diverse climate as well. And because of this very diverse climate, there's again a lot of potential. Again, there may be areas which are deserts, there may be areas where are the mountains which have very lush green, or where we have lush green forest. There may be areas where waterfalls are there because of continuous rainfall. So climate, there may be pleasing climate, hot conditions, warm conditions, cold condition. So again, climate is a factor. Then third, when you look at the resource potential, then we have cultural aspects. Different cultures, they are present in the country, and when we move into some other area, there's a tremendous potential for exploring those cultural aspects. For example, I may like to go to some area where I may like the food of that particular area. Okay? I may like dance forms of certain areas, or I may like some art forms of that particular area. So cultural aspects are important, for which provide a lot of resource potential. Then fourth is historical aspects. That means we have had a very long history. So there are some of the ancient sites in the country, there are some of the medieval sites in the country, some of the sites which are quite recent. So we have historical aspects as well. So because of difference in climate, physiography, because of cultural aspects, historical aspects, we have a tremendous resource potential. Moreover, for any kind of tourism, can I say that we need some resources? Just for example, human resources also required. So you need guides, you need people who can work in the tourism industry for hospitality purposes, and we have enough of resource in terms of the human labor that is available. Okay? So human aspects also cannot be ignored here. Different dimensions, you can talk about the cultural dimensions, you can talk about economic dimensions, you can also talk about the historical dimensions, you can talk about infrastructure, accessibility, demand. These sub dimensions you can talk about here. Okay? So again, not a very difficult question and not a technical one as well. Again, related to one of the previous questions that we have discussed, migration is a reflection of regional disparities. What socio-economic and demographic consequences are experienced at the place of origin and destination? So migration is a reflection of regional disparities. We just discussed that. One of the implications of regional disparities can be migration. Okay? So most people migrate in order to improve their living standards and in order to improve their economic status. Okay? Now, when you start this question, you'll write how migration will bring a lot of change, or migration as a process will bring a lot of change to the source and the destination regions, where changes can be social, they can be economic, or they can be demographic changes as well. Okay? What socio-economic and demographic changes are consequences are experienced at the place of origin and destination? Let's say I'm talking about first socio-economic changes and then demographic changes. Achha. Socio-economic changes mein you can talk about that in source as well as the destination. Okay. What can be the changes that we may find here? देखो, यहाँ पर if people migrate from less developed areas to more developed areas, can I say in the source regions we may have the ghost villages that may develop. Okay, you can talk about ghost villages that may develop here. Okay, socio-economic change in the areas of source. Okay, so जैसे in Uttarakhand there are a number of ghost villages where all the people have gone out to work. Okay, because not enough of economic opportunities are available. Then can I say when migration takes place, people would like or people would face some of the ethnic challenges. Then it would be difficult for them to directly assimilate with the people of the destination region. So as a result, they will start living with their co-ethnics, and that retards the process of assimilation. Okay? Assimilation in the destination region becomes difficult. Then again, the same thing that we have problems related to the resource conflicts are there. Okay? So we have conflicts, we have sons of the soil, then development of ghettos may take place. Okay. So if you try to live with the co-ethnics, it may lead to development of ghettos that may retard your assimilation process. Eventually, what may happen in the destination region, assimilation may take place, integration may also take place in the higher order. Okay. So there will be some changes in the source regions, there will be some changes in destination regions in terms of socio-economic challenges. In terms of economics, abhi ye social change, economics mein, what is going to happen is that there will be benefit of remittances. Okay. So the source regions receive a lot of remittances. Okay. Jaise economy of Kerala, economy of the Doaba region of Punjab to a good extent depends on the remittances that are given from abroad. Then second, in economic reasons, can I say that in the destination regions, certain jobs are reserved for migrants? For example, if I look at people who migrate from India to, let's say, UK, a good number of taxi drivers in UAE, they are from India, Bangladesh, Pakistan. Good number of drivers that are driving cabs in many areas of England, they are basically from India and Pakistan. So what has happened is certain jobs, especially the lower order jobs in certain countries, are going to be reserved for the migrant population. In Delhi, a good number of domestic helps that we have it from the areas of Bundelkhand, some parts of Madhya Pradesh and some parts of eastern UP as well. So यहाँ पर the local population you will not find working in the other houses domestic help. This is a job which is reserved for the migrants. ठीक है. So destination में change है and source में there's a change. Then in terms of demography, can I say it will alter sex ratio in both the source and destination regions? That means migration as a process is age selective, migration as a process is sex selective. So the sex ratio changes. Then can I say that we will have the age structure that changes? In the source region, what happens is there are more number of females because males are going to migrate. In the destination regions, more of males are there. In the source regions, we will have dominance of old people. In the destination regions, we have dominance of young people. This is the change that we are going to find. Okay? So again, an easier question. Okay? The question is, in spite of various tribal area development programs, tribal areas in India still lag behind. Discuss critically with examples. We know that tribals make up approximately 8.5% of the total population of the country. We know that the tribals, they occupy some of the most interior areas of the country. And for the development of tribals, there have been a number of approaches. Initially, the approach was related to the integration, then we talked about isolation-based approach, and eventually the Panchsheel policy. Now we know that there are a number of schemes that the government started for the development of tribal areas. They say the tribal sub-plan, especially for the areas wherein tribal population were in minority. Then Panchayat extension to scheduled areas, Forest Rights Act, Eklavya schools are there. So a number of government programs are there. But despite those government programs, the tribal areas still lag behind. Discuss critically with examples. Sabse pehla reason is that these are the areas which are inaccessible. Okay? So there is a difficulty in accessibility to these particular areas. Tribals generally occupy the forest areas. Just for example, if I look at the Gaga committee report, it says that of the 58 districts which have a forest cover of more than 65%, 51 of those districts are tribal districts. That means it is a fact that most of the tribal groups, they live in the densely forested areas where accessibility is a problem. One problem. Second, when you look at the tribal areas, the other problem is that the kind of schemes that we have introduced for these people in the past, then those have not been able to create a difference. As for example, if I look at education policy, now it is very difficult to find the people from those areas who can educate the tribal children. If the outsiders go into that area, then outsiders are alienated. with the tribal culture. They many times don't respect the tribal culture and tribal values, and as a result of which dropout rates are very high. Then what we are going to find is, according to Gaga committee, there has been a lot of displacement of tribals after the independence. Gaga committee report says that tribals will make up 8.5% total population of the country, but of the total people who have been displaced after independence due to various development related projects, be it the dams, be it mining, or be it factories, then tribals make up 40% of the total displaced people. Now, there is a higher dropout rates in tribal children, more of anemia amongst the tribal women, more of IMR and MMR amongst the tribal regions. So point is, the tribal areas, they are lagging behind despite the government efforts, and the reasons are one, that there is inaccessibility of tribal areas, then historical policies have alienated the tribals, okay? Then the education of tribals, wherein we are not able to provide enough of education facilities, enough of medical facilities in the tribal areas, because once you're a doctor, you are not willing to go to a remote area. Once you are educated, you're not going to willing to those areas where you can teach the tribal people. So if you are going to look for these activities, you will not find enough of workforce which is ready to go to those areas, despite the government that runs a number of programs related to the tribes. Okay? Then you can talk about how the tribal areas are rich in resources. These are resource-rich regions, and as a result of which, number of times for exploitation of those resources, the laws have been not very effective. For example, you can cite the case of Vedant versus the Dongaria cones about Niyamgiri Raja or the Niyamgiri Hills, where the bauxite mining was to be done. That means, though PSA, Panchayat Extension Scheduled Areas, was much enforced, but it was not catered to, it was not adhered to till the time the activists interfered and till the time the Supreme Court passed a judgment. So there have been resources which are very rich in these areas, and the greed for those resources is also making some of the tribal programs less successful. Or for example, if I look at the tribal regions, okay, and their development, what you're going to find is that tribal areas, many a times, the developmental policies of the government, it leads to the tribal alienation. Just say, for example, conservation projects. I am living in a tribal area, government declares it's a tiger reserve, it's a core area, I'm evacuated off my area. So, point is, they are still lagging behind, and there are a number of reasons. So first, what you're going to do is, you are going to give the statistics here. Suppose मैंने introduction देना है, so if I have to introduce this topic, what I'm going to do is, Government of India has started a number of tribal programs like tribal subplan, Panchayat Extension Scheduled Areas, Eclave model schools, hostels for tribal population. But despite all of these schemes, tribal areas still lag behind. As per Gaga committee report, more than 70% of the tribal women are anemic. As per the same report, more than 50% is the dropout rates related to the dropout rate amongst the tribal children. More than 50% of tribal children are underweight. So I will give these kind of statistics. Then I will discuss critically with examples. Then I will talk about inaccessibility, historical reasons, how these have been lagging behind because of these policies. Okay? Again, question which is not on the difficult side. Again, a very easy question. What are the geographic factors influencing distribution of high annual rainfall in certain parts of India? When you look at high annual rainfall, identify the areas that have high annual rainfall. That is west coast of India. That is Konkan, Karnataka coast, Goa coast, and the areas of Malabar coast. So यहाँ पर rainfall is very heavy, and rainfall is very heavy in this area largely because of the Western Ghats. So these are the windward sides of Western Ghats, and rainfall increases from north to south because southern areas or southern parts of Western Ghats are higher than the north. So we'll have more rainfall in Malabar and less rainfall in Konkan region. Okay. Second area of very heavy rainfall, Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Again, this is the area where we have a very long monsoon season. Monsoon arrives very early. This is the area where, again, this is an island region which is having a number of hills, and those are the areas which are able to block the monsoon winds, and unobstructed monsoon winds come from this area very near to the ocean that brings the rainfall which is very high. Then you can talk about northeastern part of India. यहाँ पर again the orientation of mountains. You can talk about funneling effect. It is surrounded by mountains on all these sides. You can talk about Grier-Simpson, who says that winds will get deflected from Pegu-Yoma, Arakan-Yoma and will enter into the northeastern India through gaps and passes, and ultimately they're trapped between the Himalayas, the Meghalaya Plateau and the Purvanchal Hills. Certain areas like Mausinram or Cherrapunji, they have exceptionally heavy rainfall because they are located at the northernmost end of a very deep valley wherein the winds are trapped during the night and early morning they give very heavy rainfall. Then we have areas, यहाँ पर it is windward side of the mountain. This is a long monsoon season, ocean proximity. यहाँ पर भी this is near to the ocean. Funneling effect you can talk about. Okay. Then some parts of Uttarakhand and Himachal also have a heavy rainfall, largely areas wherein the valleys are there, where the winds are trapped in the valleys. Moreover, in many parts of Himachal, what we will also see, the Bay of Bengal branch of monsoon meeting with the Arabian Sea branch of monsoon. Okay? So proximity to the ocean, the mountains and the meeting of winds, these are the areas where we have very heavy rainfall, and the reasons are as well. Okay? So you know the easiest of the question, I think. Again, a very easy question. Indian population belongs to large number of races. Discuss the spatial distribution of major races. Again, what you are going to do is you are going to draw the map that is given by Guha. So what are the areas where we have the Mongoloids? What are the areas where we have Negritos? What are the areas where we have Western Brachycephals? What are the areas where we have the Mediterraneans? What are the areas where we have Nordics? Okay? So basically you are going to draw a map and then you are going to mark those areas wherein we have the races. Okay? Largely the tribal groups will belong to Australoids. Most of the northwestern part of India, it is largely Indo-Aryans. Then we will find Negritos in the areas of Andaman Nicobar and some also present in the tribal regions of Kerala and Tamil Nadu. And then you will find rest of the areas or the Himalayan region, the areas of northeast which is occupied by Mongoloids, and then this way you are going to mark it. Then you are going to write as well what are the major areas where tribes are present or where the major races are present. Then it says discuss a spatial discipline. Discuss. That means कहाँ पर हैं और वहाँ पर हैं तो क्यों हैं? If they are present in some parts, why are they present in some parts? Because it has been a very long process wherein it has been a continuous struggle between the different races. Now, we know for sure that Indians, or the human race did not evolve in India. Okay, this is for sure. But what we do not know exactly is what are different time periods in which different races came. But it is for sure that Negritos were first to arrive and then the Nordics or Indo-Aryans were last to arrive. So first to arrive were the Negritos and last to arrive were the Indo-Aryans. So eventually what happened was the earlier races were being pushed towards the periphery, they were pushed southwards, and eventually as a result we have the continuous struggle between different races in different points of time has given the present day structure or present day distribution to different races. Okay? Not a difficult question, again a very easy question. Examine the transitional role of technology on Indian agriculture. Transitional role of technology. That means we are a country wherein we don't have a very high level of technology as we have, let's say, in Israel or as we have in US or even in a country like, for example, Japan. But we are also not a country wherein we have the agriculture which is as primitive as we find in many African nations. So technology is developing and it is in a phase of transition. Then we are witnessing a number of transitions in the country. Just for example, we were largely using the farm saved seeds, but now we are moving towards the high yielding varieties. That means ये transition है. इसमें technology is playing a very important role. And for example, the development of hybrids, the genetically or biotechnology plays a very important role in development of high yielding varieties. Then we were focusing on the subsistence farming. Okay. Then now transition is towards the extensive agriculture, or we can also talk about the commercial farming. Okay. So यहाँ पर from subsistence to commercial, you would need a lot of machines. Just for example, for extensive commercial cultivation, you would need large pieces of land wherein heavy tractors will be required, harvesters will be required. Like compare the agriculture that we still practice in the Indian Himalayan region in northeastern India with the agriculture that is practiced in Punjab, wherein 90% of rice and wheat is harvested with the help of harvesters. Okay? Transplantation is still done by hand, but harvesting is done with the help of machines. So we are in a phase of transition here. Okay? The transition can be in the form of, let's say, irrigation, in the form of machines. For example, we were largely dependent on manpower. Now, good number of operations have been mechanized, but the entire agriculture practice has not been mechanized. Still, a lot of scope is there for animal power or for human labor, but still, we have seen some good levels of machine usage. Irrigation, we are not using the same old systems of Persian wheel, but we are also not very much, we also don't have much of usage of the micro irrigation system. Again, transition phase. Okay? Transitional role of technology on Indian agriculture. Okay? Now, what is the role? That is, these machines are helping us moving from a primitive system of agriculture to a modern system of agriculture. It may not be as modern as we have or as developed in terms of technology as we have in some of the other areas of the world, but we are witnessing a change as of now. Okay? This is a transition that we need to talk about. Okay? Then, cultural background of states in India is reflected in the attributes of sex and age structure. A similar question was asked in the past as well. So, second time we are having this kind of question. Cultural background. How does cultural background decide the attributes of sex and age? Now, when I look at the age structure, can I say age structure to a large extent, it is related to longevity, okay? And it is also related to the fertility. Okay? Age structure is largely related to longevity, it's related to fertility. If suppose longevity is on the higher side and TFR is low, then we will have more of old people. If suppose longevity is low and TFR is very high, then we will have dominance of young people. Okay? So, same ways, sex ratio or attributes of sex. If I look at sex ratio, it also depends on a number of factors. Just for example, it depends on education of women. It depends on the background. It depends on the different aspects of society. Now, how is cultural background of states in India reflected in the attributes of sex and age structure? You will explain this question, you will answer this question through examples. Just for example, if I look at an area like, for example, Kerala. Okay? Kerala is an area wherein we have a high sex ratio. Okay? Sex ratio is much better than many other areas of the country. Why do we have high sex ratio? Because Kerala has had a culture where females have seen a lot of education since the past. Okay? Since quite long, females have been well educated in these areas. Because of good education in these are areas where sex ratio is moderately high. Second, these are also the areas where we are going to find that a number of matrilineal societies are there. Okay, just say Nayars are a matrilineal society, and as a result, you will find that in most of the matrilineal societies, be it tribal or be it non-tribal, you will find that sex ratio will be on the higher side. So Kerala mein better education of women, Kerala mein better empowerment of women, many of the societies which are matrilineal, as a result of which better sex ratio. Compare it to a state, let's say for example Punjab. Now we will find agrarian setup here. Inheritance laws wherein the land is passed on to the son after the father. Now, Even today, when you talk about agricultural land, not talking about the land in the urban areas, in agricultural land still the same rule prevails, that land will be passed on from father to the son. So idea is that there is a unsaid norm for having a male child, at least one male child, so that the land is not passed on to some other family. So यहाँ पर agrarian setup है, land is the main source of income, land is a major status or major source of occupying status in the society. So यहाँ पर what is going to happen is sex ratio is quite low. Same ways, age structure. If I look at the average age of a man in Tamil Nadu and compare it with the average age of a man in Bihar, average person in Tamil Nadu is quite old compared to average person in Bihar. The simple reason being that Bihar mein the fertility rates are very high, Tamil Nadu mein fertility rates are less. One reason, Tamil Nadu is an industrially developed region where a lot of employment opportunities are also available for women. Women are more educated, so they are able to plan their families better. Tamil Nadu mein, because women are also working, then children will demand time and resources. So the couples, because of better or higher living standards, higher cost of living, they were choosing to have less than or fewer children. Whereas यहाँ पर again traditional mindset, less of education, limited opportunities available for women, as a result of which we will have very high fertility. When fertility is very high, second, we don't have enough of medical facilities in those areas. As a result, what is going to happen is यहाँ पर longevity is less Bihar में, and as a result of which the fertility is high, so more of young people are there. यहाँ पर the background, cultural background is there, that women are empowered. These are the areas wherein industrial work is available, and as a result of which we will have a high longevity and a low TFR. So those states which have been able to have a better sex ratio, culturally they are generally tribal societies. Suppose I compare Chhattisgarh with, let's say, other state, let's say Bihar. You'll find a lot of difference, though they are not very far away. But Chhattisgarh mein, because number of tribes are there, so you will find tribal societies are more, or they are much better compared to the caste-based societies when it comes to the sex ratio. So cultural background. So cultural background is important in deciding the sex ratio and deciding the age structure, because these are those factors. Okay. Again, an easy attempt. Discuss the targets of focused interventions of Jal Shakti Abhiyan, Catch the Rain 2024 in rural and urban areas. देखो, जल शक्ति अभियान बेसिकली दिस ईयर वाज अबाउट नारी शक्ति से जल शक्ति. ठीक है, सर्टेन इंटरवेंशंस आर देयर इन जल शक्ति अभियान. वन इज the water conservation and the rainwater harvesting. Second is intensive afforestation. Third is recharge of the wells, bore wells, and reuse of water. Then fourth of the intervention is watershed development. Okay? So renovation of traditional water harvesting structure. These are the different targets or different components of Jal Shakti. And the question is, discuss the targets of focused intervention of Jal Shakti Abhiyan, Catch the Rain 2024 in rural and urban areas. If you look at the Jal Shakti Abhiyan of 2024, Nari Shakti se Jal Shakti. Why is this name? Because it is a women who are largely responsible for fetching the water in most of the rural areas and even in the urban areas. Okay? So the women can also play a very important role in water conservation. So this year the focus was that we need to go for intensive afforestation, rejuvenation of these small streams, and afforestation can also help in rejuvenation itself. It was about the setting up of Jal Shakti Kendras, which is going to provide the training for, which is going to provide information about the water management practices. It was also about the conservation of the rainwater and conservation of water and rainwater harvesting structures. So this year it was also about intensive afforestation, okay, and geotagging of the water bodies that we have seen since past as well. Okay, not much of a difference. So urban areas में largely recycle and reuse पे focus रहेगा. Urban areas में focus will be on development of rain gardens and bioswales. And rural areas में the focus will largely be on rejuvenation of small streams, rainwater harvesting in both rural as well as urban areas, at the household level, at the village level यहाँ पर. ठीक है? So this is basically target focused intervention. Then India is playing a very significant role in the world affairs. Examine the stands taken by India in important global and regional summits. ठीक है? अच्छा, यहाँ पर not a very difficult question. People who have some knowledge of IR would be able to answer. So you can talk about how India is a very important country in the world and how the importance of India has increased all the more in the past few decades, how the Indian diaspora has occupied some very important positions, and how India has also been able to assert itself in the global platforms. Okay, ऐसे करके you can start this question. Then examine the stands taken by India in important global and regional summits. देखो, you can talk about summits like, for example, G20. देखिए, what was the India stand? G20 में largely the tussle was between West and Russia, China, where Russia, China, they said basically that it is an economic summit. There's no need to talk about Ukraine war. Because then we were able to develop, or we were able to bring a consensus, and we had this Delhi Declaration. Okay? So Delhi Declaration mein we were able to bring both the parties. So India played a very important role here, in Delhi Declaration, by developing a consensus between West as well as in between Russia and China. Then you can talk about the stand in UN. UN mein India stand is about one, Security Council, that is better representation of Security Council, democratic representation in the Security Council, UNSC. Then it is about wider representation of the African nations in the UN bodies. Third, also about how the institutions of the world like IMF, World Bank, they need restructuring. Now, when you look at this, now यहाँ पर examine the stand. Now, examine the stand in G20, examine the stand in UN, or let's say examine the stand in climate summit, okay, UN conference on climate change. If I look at the climate summit, then India has been largely focusing on the climate financing, how we need to accept the common but differentiated responsibilities, how every country would have to cater to the, or would have to adhere to climatic standards, but at the same time we cannot ignore the population which is living below poverty. Okay? So we were able to represent the entire global south. Now examine the stands here. India played a very important role. It was able to bring both the parties to the table here, and we had this Delhi Declaration which was all about consensus between the two parties. Okay? So we played a leadership role here. UN mein India since long has been talking about reforms in United Nations Security Council, to make it more democratic, which is required for the world, especially in the present day cases. Then all about African nations. In the next few years, what is going to happen is Africa will be the most populous continent of the world. Now, the rate of population growth that we are witnessing in Africa, this is the continent which is going to see maximum of the population in the next few decades. And as a result, when you look at this country or this continent, this is an area wherein we have a large number of our poorest people of the world. So if you want to talk about development of the world, then in that case, you need better representation of Africa in the UN bodies. Then restructuring of the world institutions like IMF, World Bank, where we need a better voice to be given to Global South. Okay? Yahan par again the same thing, that the developed nations, they cannot talk about just the climate change bringing down the temperature without climate financing. They cannot ignore their past practices, and they will have to provide the finances which is required for mitigation measures. At the same time, we also have made it very clear that climate or temperature alone cannot be the sole basis. It cannot be the sole basis of judging the climate change, or judging the, or it is not the best criteria for it is not the best criteria for assessing the development of the different nations with respect to climate. Okay, so you can talk about how we have taken a stand in SARC, which is now defunct. We have talked about that we need SARC minus Pakistan because the country is committing a number, or it is supporting a number of non-state actors in India. Okay? You can also talk about how we have played an important role in ASEAN. Okay? You can talk about BRICS, how it has expanded, and then how we are providing a counter to the G7 countries. So, yahan par you can talk about all of this. Okay? Another interesting question: how do small and fragmented land holdings affect agro-ecological system in rural India? What are resilient steps needed to overcome this issue? Now, the question is not about how do small and fragmented farm holdings affect agriculture production, how they affect mechanization. It is all about how do small and fragmented farm holdings, fragmented land holdings affect agroecological systems. The agroecological system is all about ensuring that whatever agriculture practices are taken up in the country, all of these agriculture practices, they are sustainable in nature. They are able to cater to the overall ecological demand. It talks about nutrient recycling. It talks about reducing the carbon emissions. It talks about reducing the footprint of carbon. So, it is agroecological system. Now, the question is, what is the relationship between small and fragmented farm holdings and the agroecological systems? Now, यहाँ पर basic system is that if I have small and fragmented farm holdings, Government of India is talking about natural farming, organic farming, permaculture. उस सभी के लिए the government has an approach which is the approach through collective farming. That is, a cluster development program is required for any kind of sustainability or sustainable practices. Now, if you have small and fragmented farm holdings, then in that case, you will not be able to achieve the economies of scale. Second, then in that case, it is a bit difficult to develop a consensus amongst all the farmers and develop the entire area in the form of a cluster wherein organic farming or the sustainable agriculture can be practiced. So, is lines pe you are going to discuss it. What are the resilient steps needed to overcome this issue? Now, one, that is you can talk about development of collective farming through cooperatives, agriculture cooperatives. You can talk about development of farmer producer companies or organizations. You can talk about self-help groups. Okay? Agriculture to be practiced through these. So we first need to develop the clusters. Second, we need land reforms of the new phase, wherein we need a better system of land corporatization. That means land could be rented out to corporate bodies so that they are able to go for sustainable, or they are able to go for the farming over a very large area. Okay? So you can talk about land reforms here, resilient step, then development of agriculture cooperative, farm producer organization, self-help groups. Then also you need to ensure about the marketing of the agriculture produce that are there. So if I'm able to produce the organic products or agriculture products sustainably, and if I don't have a market, then it will be a problem. So resilient steps may overcome this issue is agriculture cooperatives, land reforms of the new phase, and also the marketing changes that we require or marketing reforms that are needed. Okay. Like one of the questions which is on the tougher side, especially because of the second part that we have. How can morphology of Indian towns be described historically? Discuss the major features of the first planned city in India after independence. The first part everybody would be able to attempt. That is morphology. Okay. Morphology, you can talk about the physical morphology. Then you can talk about the social morphology and the functional morphology. And we are talking about the history. Described historically. Historically, functional means that there have been the traditional bazaars in India, different from the present day malls, different from the central business districts of the Western world. Okay? So, functional mein, the traditional bazaars were there that had mix of the residential and commercial functions. Okay? ये है आपका the functional morphology. Social morphology mein, historically also we have seen that there has been a class-based segregation, then religion-based segregation, largely a phenomena after the British rule. And then we have also seen in the pre-independence or immediately after independence, the caste-based segregation as well in the factory system. Okay? In the factory system, we have seen the caste-based segregation as well. Okay? This is also seen. Achha. Then when you look at the physical morphology, historically, cities were largely linear, or the cities, they had the circular pattern. Okay? So this was largely along the roads, along the rivers, or the cities had circular pattern. Okay? Around a tank a city develops, or it used to be an overgrown village. But then now this is an easy part. Discuss the major features of first planned city of India after independence. That means when you look at the first planned city, that is Chandigarh. Okay? Now most of us will not be able to find exact information about Chandigarh. Okay? Now you can say Chandigarh was the first planned city, or this was the main architect, but now main features pucha hai. So what you can write here is, you can talk about how in Chandigarh grid-based pattern has been followed. How in the different sectors markets have been set up. How the roads have been designed, which are very broad, and roads are designed in along the orientation of the winds. Okay, so that self-cleaning is possible. Okay, so isme you will find some case studies. So most of the students would have found it very difficult to write exactly or exact details about Chandigarh. Otherwise, the first part would have been very easy. So next question is, health is the outcome of interaction between physical setting, cultural traits, and ecological connection. Now, if you look at this question, the question is on the tougher side, which says three things: physical setting, cultural traits, and ecological connection is going to decide the health. Take health is the outcome of these three things. What will come under physical setting? Physical setting would include the climate of any area. It will include the physiography of any particular region. Okay? Cultural traits, it would include the system, let's say for example, the dietary habits or food habits. Okay? It will include the system of, or the other culture, let's say the system of marriage. Okay? It will include the other aspects like how the society that you're living in focuses on health. Okay? So, suppose if I look at climate and physiography, how are these, or how is the physical setting going to decide the health of an individual? When we look at the human being has adapted itself to the physical setting. For example, if suppose I'm a person living in the hills, then people who generally live in the hills, they have larger lungs. Because if I go up the hill, then there will be limited amount of oxygen, and in order to survive, I need a larger lung. So if I look at the people who live in the Indian Himalayan region, let's say for example, if I look at the Bhotias, if you look at their lungs, they will have a larger capacity of the lungs. So physical setting is going to decide the health. If I'm living in a hilly area, then people of hills are very hardy people. The simple reason being that the life here is tough and a lot of physical exercise is required. When I look at the climate or physiography, again, what you are noticing is Ellen Semple, you can quote here, that she says the people of hills, they are a bit different from the people of plains. She talks about how the people of hills are more laborious, and if you are going to engage in more of labor, then it is going to provide some kind of exercise and you will have a better health. Then if suppose I look at the climatic conditions, the areas wherein you will have hot and humid conditions, the argument is that in most of these areas, people, they find bit lazy. They are less likely to exercise. So, yahan par it is going to affect their health. Similarly, when you look at the cultural habits, take suppose if I look at the dietary habits, no, though debatable whether vegetarian diet is better or non-vegetarian diet is better, but it has been a study that was done by Geddes, and Geddes in a study says that in a country like India, there were a greater chance of people having non-vegetarian diet, also the greater chance of people having vegetarian diet contacting a disease like malaria. So he studies between Hindus and Muslims and says that Muslim people with a non-vegetarian diet, they are likely to develop better immunity and they will have less of chance of malaria. Though debatable, but still a study has been done on that by Geddes. Then for example, marriage. Cultural habits में very important is that is you'll find health is the outcome of many of the marital factors as well. Just for example, we'll find all those societies wherein we have inbreeding. Okay, where inbreeding is there, those are the societies wherein you are going to find a number of health problems. Just in Pakistan, cousin marriage is very common. So in those areas, you'll find number of health problems are going to occur. So rules of marriage or cultural setting is going to decide the health. Or for example, culture, for example, it depends on the diet. Just for example, if I compare a Sikh person, a person living in Punjab with a person that lives in Tamil Nadu, normally, if I compare the build of these two people, what I'm going to notice is that the people living in Punjab, they have a greater height, a better muscular structure. One simple reason can be that they have lactose tolerance. They are able to tolerate a lot of milk-based proteins, and as a result of which, they have a diet which is rich in milk. They have a diet which is rich in the milk-based proteins, and their body is having a better structure, or they may have a better health in terms of muscular structure compared to an average Tamilian person. Okay? It depends on society. What is the most important trait in a society? A society may be focusing more on the education. A society is there which may focus more on health. So it is a cultural trait that is going to decide the health. Or ecological connection. For example, when I look at the ecological connection, what if I look at the groundwater? Groundwater contamination is a problem in many areas. Fluoride contamination, arsenic contamination, or nitrate contamination. Can I say because this water is used for drinking purposes, the ecology which is impacted where groundwater is highly polluted is going to affect the health of a person? Then, for example, if I look at the air quality, just for example, if I look at Delhi, Delhi is a place wherein we have highly polluted air. A lot of people in Delhi, even young children, very young children, they suffer from problems of bronchitis. They suffer from respiratory problems. It is related to air quality as well. Again, related to ecological connection. So we're living in a place where in clean water, clean air is there, you are less likely to contact diseases. So when you are going to attempt this question, this cannot be attempted without the examples that you can quote. Okay? You can talk about Huntington, how he talks about how the environment is very important for, or how the physical setting is very important for the growth of an individual in terms of its health. You can talk about Ellen Semple. Then you can talk about how Geddes concludes, or how inbreeding is a problem, or how food habits will change, or how society, or then again ecological connection is always important. So a question on a tougher side, on-spot improvisation is required in these kind of questions. And in order to conclude, you can just conclude on a positive note, talking about how we need a good health, and how good health is the biggest asset that a human can have. Okay, so this is how you're going to attempt it.
These are the questions basically related to the contemporary issues. I take up question 1C. Conservation and breeding centers are important components of action plan for vulture conservation. Why? So this is the question on vulture conservation, and this action plan for vulture conservation came up in 2020. Now, you begun with the major components of action plan for vulture conservation. There are 4 or 5 major components under this plan. One of them is that identify what are the sources of poisoning of the vultures. The main source remains the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. So minimizing those sources of poisoning of the vultures. The second is conservation and breeding centers will be set up. The next is that vulture fly zones will be created. And another component is that if there are any other sources of vulture mortality like electrocution with the high tension cables, etc., those need to be reduced as well. Those need to be eliminated as well. So give 4 or 5 points in the introduction, give the points which are under the action plan for vulture conservation. And then the basic reason why this happens is because the population of all the vultures in our country has drastically declined. 4 of them have become critically endangered. Be it the slender-billed vulture, the long-billed vulture, be it the red-headed vultures of the country, or the oriental white-backed vulture. For all of them, in the last 3-4 decades, the population has declined by 99%, such that they're facing the risk of extinction. They're on the verge of extinction. So that is the reason whenever extinction risk looms large, the ex situ conservation approach is adopted by the government. So this is an approach of ex situ conservation only. Conservation and breeding centers becomes an example of the ex situ conservation. So the first time this breeding center was opened up, it was at a place called as Pinjore in Haryana. Later on, many of the states came up with vulture conservation and breeding centers. Today, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Assam, West Bengal, Odisha. There are many states across the country which have these breeding centers. Central Zoo Authority works in collaboration with the forest departments, and they set up the conservation breeding centers. So under this, you're going to write the components of the plan. You're going to write the threats faced by the vultures. You're going to mention the species of the vultures, the 4 I told you, how the populations have declined by around 99%. They are facing the risk of extinction, and that takes care of this question. The next one, which I take up, is the question 5D. So question 5D is on drought management, which says that, again a compulsory question, 5D, which says that describe the area-specific strategies for the development of drought-prone areas in the country. So the examiner is asking you area-specific strategies for development of drought-prone areas in the country. So you can mention about the drought-prone area program, that the drought-prone area program was launched in our country with the aim of development of the drought-prone regions. Back in 1973-74, the program was launched, and it aims at a comprehensive, at a holistic approach, wherein land resources, water resources, the biodiversity, the natural vegetation, the animal resources, they are maintained, and along with that, the livelihood of the people is taken care of as well under DPAP. So you can begin with the introduction on DPAP, and that around 16% of the total area and 12% of the country's population is affected by droughts. Then you move on to, after the introduction, you move on to the area specific strategies. So over here, there are a couple of ways or a couple of points which can be mentioned. One is that you have different types of drought happening in the country: meteorological drought, hydrological drought, and then you have the agricultural drought. Depending upon what drought is being faced by a region, the strategy is needed. For example, that if it's a meteorological drought, then the strategy will be that we need very good monitoring and forecast, timely forecast by IMD about the projected rainfall or the scarcity of the rain which is likely to be experienced by that region. That should be known to the administration. And then by making use of agriculture, extension and communication services, the administration of the region undertakes critical steps, which are going to be short-term steps. So short-term steps are ones which are needed for the meteorological drought, because IMD makes the forecast and then the steps are put into place. So those short-term measures are given by the drought management crisis plan. Those are the guidelines by the central government. I'm sure all of you know about it. If it's a hydrological drought, Cherrapunji experiences hydrological drought. Many of the cities in the country face hydrological drought. That's water scarcity. So now the area specific strategy becomes rainwater harvesting, proper management of the water resources. Cherrapunji, because of mismanagement of the water resources, faces hydrological drought. The topography is such that, and then there is no vegetative cover. The soil is such that. So we require again a watershed based approach, which is going to be the area specific strategy. Under this, drinking water supply, so government must ensure that first water availability is there, and then tapped drinking water supply to every household, because in hydrological drought, especially in rural areas like Cherrapunji, the women folk, they have to do the physical drudgery of fetching the water. The child generally accompanies. So how the developmental parameter gets affected, so that becomes a area specific strategy as well for the development. It's a comprehensive development. It's not just that you are trying to manage the drought, but for the comprehensive development, what is needed, that should be mentioned. Then it comes to agricultural drought. Now when it comes to agricultural drought, you have the certain regions which are lying to the west of 100 centimeter ISO height, some of the regions which are lying to the east of 100 centimeter ISO height. For example, districts like Purulia of West Bengal, Kalahandi of Odisha, then Palamu of Jharkhand. These are the regions which have experienced droughts as well. Now, these are wetter parts of the country. Despite that, they face agricultural drought. To the west of 100 centimeter ISO height, Kutch, Saurashtra of Gujarat, Rajasthan, peninsular interior, parts of Karnataka, Maharashtra, all of them have experienced drought. So for agricultural drought, now what is needed? Again, rainwater harvesting becomes very essential. Then cropping pattern based upon the agroclimatic zonation. That becomes very, very important. For example, in Maharashtra, the way water is distributed across Vidarbha and Marathwada, there are great disparities. Much of the irrigation potential of Maharashtra is channelized to Marathwada at the cost of Vidarbha. So Vidarbha experiences drought. So what becomes the area specific strategy? That there should be more equitable distribution of irrigation potential across the state. That becomes an area specific strategy for the development. So basically, the causal factor for the drought and the type of drought will have to be identified. There are 3 types of droughts like I discussed. And then based on that, the area specific strategy will have to be worked out. The cropping pattern has to be in sync. Then if it's a agricultural drought, then alternate employment in form of MG Narega, that should be provided. Anyway, the PDS needs to be strengthened. Free grains and fodder need to be provided. Then waiving off the farm loans should be done. So all of these, the steps which you have studied under drought management, but depending upon what that area, the causal factor, along with that, the type of drought, you will have to give in your answer. The next question is 6A. Now this is the question on pollution. And it says that industrial waste is diversified, discuss the potentials and the challenges associated with it. The quantum of industrial waste in the country has increased and is bound to increase because industrialization is increasing. It's diversified because industries, they generate all type of waste depending upon the industrial activity being undertaken. It could be air pollution, it could be water pollution, it could be the waste generation in form of electronic waste, or it could be noise pollution. Soil pollution can be a consequence as well. So industrial waste is diversified. The potential associated, now in potential you basically had to discuss how this waste can be used as a resource. Potential means that can waste be used as a resource. So yes, there is a potential for using the waste as the resource as well. For example, fly ash, which is a waste from thermal power plants that can be used for road construction. Industrial waste can be burned through a process of incineration for energy generation. That becomes an example of potential. Industrial wastewater, that can be recycled and that can be used for non-drinking purposes, non-cooking purposes. That becomes a potential. So, couple of points under potential. The challenges remain that in our country, one, the enforcement of the pollution norms is quite poor. Another is that there is less investments done by the industrialist, by the industry sector into waste management. It may have a potential, but unless and until the investments are made, unless and until there are policies in place and those policies are in the sense working enough, functional policies such that the waste is actually being used as a resource, that's not happening. So the implementation, technology may be available, possibility may be there, but the possibility is not being realized into a reality because there is less interest by the industrialists themselves. And moreover, in this particular sector, the circular economy, that's not much functional. First is that industrial waste, the quantum of industrial waste, that needs to be reduced. That's not happening because the norms are weakly enforced. The pollution control norms, they're weakly enforced. That's a challenge. And second is that the circular economy of processing of industrial waste is weak as well. So that becomes a challenge too. So that becomes the major discussion on question number 6A.
So now we'll discuss the questions that are pertaining to paper 2. of, that is Indian geography. So here there are two questions that I'll be discussing. One is question number 2B. This is related to the Indian space program. You can answer this question more from the current affairs you might have studied about, though it is mentioned as a part of your syllabus, but this question is pertaining to the information that is from the current context of Indian space policy. So the question is, Indian space policy 2023 supports the commercial presence in space. One part. Second, in what ways will it benefit the socio-economic development and security in India? So we are dividing this question into two segments. The first part of the question is, the space policy 2023 supports the commercial presence in space, means it supports the private sector in space. And second is, what can be the benefit of the Indian space policy in context of the socio-economic development and how it can improve in the security domain of India, right? Now when you are answering this, you have to look at what are the characteristic features of Indian space policy 2023. So Indian space policy, this is an upgrade over the existing policy of India. We know that Indian space policy and one of the important agencies of India, that is ISRO, the Indian presence of India in space, this is with respect to mostly it is about collection of the data. It is more related to the communication system, or it is about the monitoring system. So we are having, and also we have initiated the indigenous segment, that is NAVIC, which will be an alternative to global positioning system. So what this space policy tries to do, first look at the share of India. India only contributes 2.6% out of the total global presence, whereas United States is 40% of the share. India's share is only 2.6%. We have to improve this. So India's space policy 2023 is dynamic and composite framework, and this is opening the space segment for private sector, and it is going to provide a level playing field for everyone. Now, what are the guiding principles for of this policy? So you have to write on in these lines. Number one, it is development of the space infrastructure, optimum utilization of the assets that are related to the space, level playing field should be developed, and there should be a favorable regulatory framework. So here we can see that the vision is of 2032, means in next 10 years, how the space sector in India will develop, and India is able to increase its contribution in global scenario and also emerge as one of the important global players. Okay? So Vision 2032 is about authorizing the private sector in the space industry. Then we should also help the industries, that is known as industrial outreach. Then support the startups and investors in the space segment, supporting startup and investor. Next is develop the ecosystem that is favorable or conducive for the private entities. And last one is you should be strategizing, means you should plan in the space sector like we are having a strategy for other sector. There is a strategy for telecom sector, there is a strategy for aviation sector. Similarly, there should be a strategy for development of the space sector, that is short term and long term. Okay? So this is one segment, one part of your answer. Now see how is the socio-economic impact. When you look at the contribution of the space, as I told you, we are having two things. One is the space segment is either used for the development of communication systems, or second, it is developed for monitoring system, right? So we are having a satellite communication which are weather monitoring satellite or space monitoring satellite, or it is about transmission of the signal, it is about the data, it is about the information flow from one location to other, right? Now, how will be the socio-economic when we are allowing the private sector to contribute? We can say that how this policy will change it. So we can say here that the space segment will be reaching up to the people. It means that it will come to the use of the people directly or indirectly. People will get connected with the technology. People should be able to be a part of space revolution. They will be one of the important stakeholders in space revolution. The space technologies will be used for public goods and services. Like space technology is used for, we are using still also, it is used for education, like edusats are there. The space technology is for disaster management. Space technology is for healthcare. It is space technology is for vehicle monitoring system. In this way, it will be for public goods and services. Second, strengthen the information sharing network. And last, strengthen the defense or security network of the country, right? So the surveillance at the border and defense surveillance, intelligence and sharing of this intelligence network, this is going to get strengthened with the help of utility of this space. So this will be a broad framework in which you have to write the answer. So two themes of the questions are there and we are addressing these two themes. Some background can be included here so that because here the question is for 15 marks, 150 words need to, 200 words need to be written. Next one, the second important question, 8C. What are the major regional rapid transit system developed in the country, in India, and how are urban problems being addressed by them, right? Again, two themes of the question. Here it is about regional rapid transit system, right? Regional means between the two regions. Rapid is related to speed. Transit is movement, and a system which involves network and hierarchy. Okay? So what is, this is one part, RRTS, and second is related to how these are going to solve the urban problems. So on one side, you look at what are urban problems in India, right? Urban problems are related to, this is overpopulation. Then we look at declining space. Then next is migrations towards this region. Then this can be environmental degradation, development of slums. Then there is a poor condition of living, right? So these are some of the problems of urban areas. Can this regional rapid transport system be able to address the urban problems? So congestion, traffic, you can add to this. It can be like congestion, traffic, right? And most of our cities, they are experiencing this. So we can look at the cities like Bangalore, cities like Mumbai, cities like NCR or Delhi. They experience this type of problem. Additional environmental degradation, जैसे pollution है, air pollution and pollution of the natural environment, that can be there. So what is meaning of RRTS? RRTS, regional, as I told you, regional means connecting between the two regions. Rapid is related to speed. Transit is about movement. So this is the high speed, high capacity commuter service. Commuter service meant for moving the people, that connects between the urban urban nodes. So connecting between the urban node. So for example, you have, this is the region of Mumbai, and this is the region of Thane, right? So here connecting between Mumbai, Thane and Mumbai, or this is the region of, let us say, Gurugram, and this is the region of Delhi. Now this connect is also between the two nodal points are related to the activities, okay? Or you are connecting from, it is Ghaziabad to Delhi, this also can be considered as, so it is connecting between the urban nodes, a commuter service with high capacity and high speed, okay? What are different type? After independence we can see that what are different type of transit system. So transit system, RRTS has evolved in India. So over a period we can see the speed and mode both have been evolving, right? In context of mode, just a bus, you can see here bus transit system is there, like local buses in Mumbai. There can be local trains. Now it has been replaced by metro rail, and at some places it has been replaced, in some other countries it has been replaced by bullet train. All these are, so local trains, bus transit system, metro rail and bullet train, or it is urban transportation. All this will come under urban transportation system, okay? So what is the characteristic of the RRTS? It connects longer distances. So distance can be something like 50, 60, 100, it depends, 100, even 150, 200 kilometer. For the developed countries, we can see that even up to 200 kilometer, this regional commuter service is provided. It can be high speed, the speed can be like 100, 120. If you take bullet train, it can exceed up to 200 to 300 kilometers also in case of China. Frequency is high, the connectivity is seamless, connectivity is with very minimum number of stops, right? And comfort is optimal, right? So with minimum connectivity is seamless, with minimum stops, frequency is high, speed is high, and covers a longer distances, right? So this will be referred as RRTS, and RRTS in India has evolved after 1990. We can see after the economic reform, there is a continuous evolution of RRTS system in India. You can take an example of development of the metro rail service in NCR. This is the best example. Delhi region, NCR, the metro rail service is the best example of this RRTS, right? So what is the, so you can also write some case study here. They say, what is the result of development of RRTS? First, it facilitates the urban growth. It results in decongestion. It causes expansion of the city. And what happens here? The main city gets decongested, and we can see here the spread over. They say from paper 1 we are writing spread over effect in the adjoining regions, which are now developing as a growth center or sub-centers of growth, and this can develop as a satellite town or suburban growth or urban shadow. They say you can look at the growth of Mumbai, and this got connected with Pune, right? So this rapid system which has developed between Mumbai and Pune, this is now responsible for last 30 years. We can see there is an exponential growth of Pune. This is the spillover effect of Mumbai that is caused in the nearby region because of this transit system. Means on a daily basis we can see lot many people commuting from the adjoining areas to the growth poles. Now you can write a reference of a growth pole in this question. So this will be the structure of answer. You can also mention about the satellite town. This is again from the settlement geography. So this is the structure of answer for this question. So these are the two questions of paper